Welcome patrons, it's that time of the month again. Let's talk about some Thedas nations, specifically the home of our favorite seeker, the Kingdom of Navarra. History. As with most Thedas nations, Navarra was once a part of Tevinter, and it wasn't always called Navarra. While we don't know if it had an earlier name, the area we now know as Navarra was called Planacine. It wasn't until -180 ancient that Planacine was really noticeable in Thedas history, at which time Andraste comes into the picture. As the story goes, the Lord of Planacine, a man named Hector, was one of Andraste's loyal followers, and it was actually in his stronghold that Andraste was betrayed by her husband Matharath and captured. Now, the betrayal wasn't known at the time it happened. After Andraste died, Matharath's sons were given control over various parts of Thedas. His youngest son, Varald, was given what would eventually become the nation of Navarra. Except, imagine Varald as an incompetent Draco Malfoy who kept using his father's name for power. This annoyed everyone so much that when Matharath's betrayal was discovered, Planacine happily kicked out the ruler and killed his entire court. And if you want to know what happened to Varald, go and check out the Orlais video. It's unknown to us how Navarra actually got its name, but after Varald was kicked out, Codex entries talking about the area start calling it Navarra. The city-state of Navarra at this time was in political turmoil. During its infancy, Navarra joined the Free Marches and was one of its largest city-states. But despite this, it's said that Navarra lagged behind other city-states in the Free Marches. The reason for this lagging was that many of the rulers of Navarra used their position to help their own fortune and political position rather than Navarra itself. Navarra was essentially killing itself from the inside. It stayed like this for almost 300 years, until Caspar Pentaghasts killed the Navarran king and took the throne for himself. Under the Pentaghasts rule, Navarra began to flourish. In 283 glory, an abomination arises from the Navarran circle. While the Templars try to manage the situation, things get quickly out of control. Almost all of the Templars and mages are killed in the conflict between each other, and a demon that was summoned during the event escapes to the countryside, killing almost 70 people in its freedom. This would bring the Chantry to create the Rite of Annulment, where if the Templar Order finds mages practicing forbidden magic and irredeemable, they may appeal to the Grand Cleric in the area to kill all the mages in the circle. Anyway, all is quiet in Navarra until the Third Blight about 80 years later. Navarra teams up with Orlais, Tevinter, and the Grey Wardens to defeat the Archdemon Toth that was in Navarra's borders. Except after the victory, both Orlais and Tevinter decide they want to stay. Most of Navarra is taken by Orlais and Hunterfell is taken by Tevinter. It stayed divided like this for 40 years before Navarra regained its independence. Here we have another jump in Navarran history, and we go to 537 Exalted, when Tylus van Markham, who claimed to be related to Cordelius Draken, rallied the people of Navarra to overthrow the Pentaghasts. Under his family's rule, Navarra would grow from just a large city-state to a fully fledged nation. The Van Markham family would control Navarra until the Steel Age, when the last king died without sons and the ruling daughter married a Pentaghast, merging the two families as a single superpower in Navarra. Also during the Steel Age, dragons were called to be extinct in 615 Steel, largely thanks to the Pentaghast family and other Navarran nobles who had taken up dragon hunting as a sport. Now we jump to 782 Storm, where Emperor Etienne Valmont of Orlais marries Princess Soteria Pentaghast. This would be his second wife, taken in part for an attempt to have peace between the two nations, but mostly to have children as he had yet to have an heir. 15 years later, when the Princess Soteria had yet to have children, who wants to bet which one of them was the infertile one here, the emperor sent her away to a small cloister so that he could marry his mistress. This obviously angered Navarra, who had to march into Orlais, grab the princess from the cloister, and then left without a word. That is, until almost 50 years later. During the war with Orlais and Ferelden, Navarra took it upon themselves to attack Orlais while majority of its troops were in Ferelden in honor of the princess. While Orlais was able to beat them back, to this day the city of Perendel is still claimed by Navarra from this invasion. And while they still hold the city, Perendel isn't too happy about it, and they apparently resent not being a part of Orlais, all the while being heavily taxed by Navarra. Also, after taking the city, Navarra starts to get a bit cocky, and around 882 Blessed, they start to make moves to conquer many city-states in the Free Marches. This campaign would be stopped by one man, a Ravani named Cade Arvale, who would be named the champion of Tantervale for this action. Cade would also be the most recent champion in the Free Marches until events later in the series. And finally, in the last year of the Blessed Age, dragons, who were thought to be extinct for centuries, begin to attack rural Navarra and Orlais. This sudden re-emergence would be the catalyst as to why the Ninth Age is called Dragon Age. Geography. As for the actual land, we don't know too much. From its location on the map, we know that it's warmer than Ferelden, but colder than Tevinter. Located in its borders is the Silent Plains, which is where the first Blight was ended. This place is now described as being a wasteland with few plants or animals. We also have the Meander River, which crosses into Navarra, and is heavily used in trading with other nations and city-states. This also seems to be disputed, but I think the mineral-rich Blasted Hills also belongs to Navarra. For some reason, the wiki has the place listed in the Anderfells, but the Dragon Age role-playing rulebook mentions that the mineral-rich hills to its west belong to Navarra. So perhaps there are other mineral-rich hills, but I'm guessing it's these. Major cities in Navarra include Cumberland, which because of its location on the Waking Sea has become not only the largest city in Navarra, but one of the biggest cities in Thedas due to trade. This city also holds the Cumberland Circle of Magi, which is sort of like the capital of mages. This circle is where the Grand Enchanter, the leader of all the mages, resides and is the place where all the mages hold meetings to discuss and vote on major decisions. Hunterfell, the place where Archdemon Toth was slain, which ended the Third Blight. Navarra City, the capital of Navarra, and the place where the Grand Necropolis lies. What that is exactly, I'll get to in a moment. And Perendel, which as we discussed earlier was taken from Orlais about 60 years prior to the start of Dragon Age Origins. Politics. As you may have noticed, to talk about Navarran politics is to talk of the Pentaghasts family, known to be fierce and excellent war strategists and to single-handedly made dragons on the verge of extinction. Navarra, much like Orlais, is a monarchy, but its rulers are split into 3 dynasties. The first Pentaghast dynasty, starting from the Glory Age to the Exalted Age, which would be around 400 years. During this time, Orlais and Tevinter did briefly take the city-state, but was later recaptured by King Caspar II of the Pentaghasts family. The Van Markham dynasty. The Van Markhams, who had gained the throne by rising the public against the Pentaghasts and made Navarra into the nation it is today, ruled from mid-Exalted Age to the Steel Age, which would be a short 100 years or so. The second Pentaghast dynasty. From the Steel Age on, the Pentaghasts ruled Navarra again, thanks to marrying into the Van Markham family. Together, under the Pentaghast name, the two families enjoy a fairly high status in Navarra. Now it seems we may be on the verge of a new dynasty. The current king of Navarra, King Marcus Penteghast, is getting on in years, and it's kind of a well-known secret that his advisors are actually ruling the nation rather than him. With no known heirs, this could be a problem. While there are plenty of Pentaghasts and Van Markhams lining up to lead, many in Navarra believe that perhaps it's time for a new ruling family. Culture. Much like Orlais, Navarra is renowned for its art, and the whole country is said to be filled with artistry, even the smallest of villages. Navarra is also supposed to really love their heroes. During the fall, Navarra City hosts ancestral pageants, where the city is lined with lit candles in memory of fallen heroes and family members. Families also dress statues of respected members in family colors and hire actors to dress as the hero. These actors then act out heroic actions for all to see. In winter, nobles host balls to celebrate Navarra's history of hunting dragons. As dragons were usually hunted in winter when they were most sluggish, nobles used to host balls to celebrate a successful hunt. While hunting dragons is not as common as it once was, the hunt balls continue. Couples are said to dress in elaborate costumes, one to represent the dragon and the other to represent a hunter, and dance as if they are being hunted. Also during these balls, old dragon hearts and heads are put on display for all to see. In the springtime, the most popular activity is Winter Sun tournaments, where people test their ability with archery and sword fighting. Now, in the Dragon Age role-playing tabletop rulebook, it describes the names for Navarrans typically use real-world Austrian names. And from the two people who we've seen from Navarra, their accent's kinda hard to place. Perhaps it's supposed to be Austrian, but I'm not really sure. Oh, and unlike other places in Thedas, they actually call their currency the Guilder, or as a nickname, dragons, apparently. Religion. While most of Navarra worships the Maker and belong to the Chantry, what they are perhaps best known for is their departure from Andrastianism in regards to their dead. While most of Thedas burn their dead, as it keeps spirits from possessing the body, and something Andraste was burned so we should be too, Navarra does the complete opposite. They mummify their dead and keep them in elaborate tombs. Navarrans believe, and I don't really know why, perhaps this is just a leftover from local tradition as is not from the Chantry, that when a person dies, their soul displaces the spirit of the Fade. To mummify the body gives the spirit a safe home rather than risk it becoming a demon. The tombs that their dead reside in can be much more elaborate than most houses, with gardens, bathhouses, and even ballrooms. Some wealthy Navarrans actually begin their tombs while they're very young as to outbuild other nobles. From this belief, the Mortalitassi order was founded. This is also where the Grand Necropolis comes in. The Mortalitassi, which is founded by the Tevinter advisor to Caspar Pentaghasts, are shrouded in secrecy. Much of what these grey-cloaked mages do is unknown to others in Thedas, and they are looked at in fear to most other nations. Rumors make them out to be a death cult and experiment a little too much with necromancy. Because of the influence and knowledge of the Mortalitassi, mages in general have more political power in Navarra than other places under the eye of the Chantry, looking very similar to magisters in the Tevinter Imperium. As for the Grand Necropolis, it's described that when looking at the Grand Necropolis, it looks like a city itself, except completely silent and made for the dead. Here, possessed dead lay in their tombs, moaning, and apparently in areas abandoned by the Mortalitassi, walk around how they please. While this practice has led to rumors of Navarrans worshipping ancestors and having a weird obsession with death outside of the nation, inside, this is apparently false. Also, less religion and more superstition, but there is a type of beetle that is said to foretell death if found in the household. While other nations fear them, it's apparently common custom in Navarra to keep them in small cages for good luck. Dress. We don't really have too much on how they dress. We know that because of the Pentaghasts' love for hunting dragons, they would generally reserve dragon bone to make ebony armor for Navarran royalty, which is put on display and paraded around yearly in the wintertime. The DARPG tabletop book also has this picture listed as a Navarran adventure, but we see this armor used for the Orlesian Duke Prosper in Dragon Age 2 and various Orlesian nobles in Dragon Age's Inquisition. So while it was originally made to be Navarran, and the Prosper family does have a summer home in Navarra, the devs might have claimed this to be Orlesian now, or it's possible that Orlais and Navarra share a lot of the same fashions. At a guess and from its position in Thedas and history with both Orlais and Tevinter, I wouldn't be surprised if its fashion is somewhere in between the two. Also, from Cassandra and descriptions I've come across, it seems that blacks, reds, and more muted colors are popular in Navarra. Food. It's described that in summer, candied fruits and rare wines are popular among the nobility. In winter, roasted chestnuts and hot spiced tea is sold to people skating on the frozen Meander River. The fields of Ghislaine, which border both Orlais and Navarra, is known to grow many crops in the region, and in particular is famous for apples, so apples might be a common fruit in Navarra. Relationship with other races. Elves, dwarves, and Qunari. In short, we don't really know. We can assume that Navarra treats these races like the average Thedas nation. Elves are treated like second-class citizens, dwarves have a large hand in Illyrian trade and are on decent terms, and the Qunari are feared and distrusted. And that, dear patrons, is all that we know on Navarra. Do you still have lingering questions, proof that I'm wrong, comments about your own fan theory? Feel free to tweet me at Gilderthon on Twitter or send a PM to user Gillanon on Reddit. Duress your all.